Okay, so I want to make a few points, some of clarification and then some of argumentation with those who have posted on the discussion board so far. And I've posted some key points from everybody who has posted so far on the page for you to look at. I may or may not reference them directly in this video, but to start for clarification, we need to start with an understanding of normative versus prescriptive. Because some of you are stating that you believe in something as that's the way it tends to work, but let me see who it was, if I can find it. This is not a criticism at all, this is just to kind of get you thinking and clarify for you. Amanda B. Talks about believing ethics are relative because I think that things change from culture to culture, but then she goes on to say that I'm going to contradict myself and say that they ought to be objective. So what you actually mean, I think, to define it clearly, is that when we speak normatively, what we see tend to happen is people treat it as relative. So one culture has one set of ethics and another culture has another set of ethics. But when you say it ought to be objective, that everybody really knows what's right and what's wrong, you're saying somewhere, metaphysically speaking, in the world, there is a clear right and wrong, so that a culture could be wrong. For instance, the Nazis. A whole culture determined that everyone who disagreed with them, and all the Jews, and all the gypsies, and black people, and a few other groups, Bulgarians and some others, were less than human and needed to be killed to purify the earth. And they needed to purify the species. And that was the cultural ideal. Most people were indoctrinated into it, and most people accepted it. If you are a reasonable person, you'll look at that and say, gee, those people practiced and thought differently about ethics than I hope you do. I hope nobody's thinking those things are good. So that's one part of it. So to talk about what happens, what we see happen, yes, there is practically no ethicist or philosopher out there who's going to say, no, everybody practices the same ethics. We just all do it. We all practice the same ethics. Nobody's saying that. So when we're talking about objective versus relative, nobody on the objective side is saying everybody does this. What the objective side is saying is on some level, for some reason, prescriptively, what we ought to do is that there are some things that are just wrong no matter what, and some things that are just right no matter what. So that's the difference between normative and prescriptive. So if you think I'm a relativist because normally people do what their cultures say, but I want to be an objectivist because I think there are some things that are just wrong, then you are an objectivist. You're just being realistic. A good comparison, let's use an analogy, right? So a diet of high trans fats and loads of white sugar and white flour and heavy smoking and drinking lots of whiskey, right? And I'm not going to exercise. Let's just say I'm going to drink a bottle of whiskey, eat 3 whole pizzas, meat lovers, no veggies, follow it up with cake and a pint of beer. I'm going to sit on the couch and watch TV all day. I'm only going to get sleep 4 hours a night. There may be people who do that, who live that life. Normatively speaking, we can describe what they're doing. But as far as physical health goes, it's not healthy. It's not any physician, anybody with any kind of nutritional theory or any understanding of anything to do with the physical body is going to say that's not healthy. You shouldn't do that. It's going to kill you sooner. It's going to make you get sick more, and you're not likely to live very long doing that. Now, could there be some exception to the rule, somebody who does that, who nonetheless seems to be relatively healthy? Sure, you might find the odd bird that, ends up living to 100 doing that. But usually, you ought not do that, and if you live that way, you're going to end up very sick. So you ought to not do that. That's prescriptive. Whether you do it doesn't change the prescriptive. What the normative doesn't make the prescriptive less true. You should eat some vegetables. You should eat less white flour. You shouldn't eat a ton of white sugar. You shouldn't drink, a bottle of whiskey every day and, a couple of pints of beer and chase it down with donuts. Those are things you should not do. The fact that some people might do it doesn't change whether or not you should do it. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you live, if that's your cultural diet, if your family has done that their whole life. If you want to live a healthy, long life, you shouldn't do those things, because those things are contrary to a healthy, long life. Prescriptively speaking of your health, those are things you shouldn't do. A person who's saying they're objective ethics is saying ethics are similar, that the soul of humans, that the society of humans is such, that there is such order, or that you can live a healthy, ordered life. If you want a healthy, ordered life, then there are some things that you should do and some things that you should not do. And there can be some variation, right? So when we talk about the physical health and the diet, right? Maybe I hate spinach, so I don't eat spinach. Okay, but maybe I eat mustard greens or broccoli, so I can get my green leafy vegetables that are so healthy for me that I need. I like it. An objective ethicist is going to say there are slight cultural differences. Just like one culture may not know that a certain leafy green exists and another culture does, the fact that the human body probably needs some leafy green vegetables doesn't change from culture to culture. It's part of our biological makeup. An objectivist is going to say there are some things that just shouldn't be done and some things that should be done, and there might be some variation, but if you want a steady, healthy culture, sociologically speaking, there are just things that should and should not be done. There may be some variation. So that every culture is going to have some sense that something is equivalent to murder. There's somebody that you should not kill, or some reason that you should not kill. And when you talk about, well, there's justified killing, that word justified means that there has to be some reason for it. If there has to be some reason for it, then it's not essentially a good thing. Here's what I mean. Friendship is a human good. There doesn't have to be a reason for it. Friendship is just good. Bodily health is a good thing. Kindness doesn't have to be justified. Why did you do that act of kindness? How dare you, right? Nobody says that. No culture says that. So it's just, these are the realities of human life. There are some things that just are true, morally speaking, and some that aren't. That's what an objectivist is saying. A true relativist is going to say, here's the struggle for you. In fact, somebody asked a good question in one of the ones I posted. Let me find it really quickly. See if I can do this left-handed, because I'm holding my phone in the right hand. Okay, here it is, I think. Let's see, who is this? Michael B. If one were to grow up around the ethical behaviors of their families but choose not to adopt those same views, where does their ethics come from? Are you saying that these people have no ethics? And if they choose not to adopt these ethical views, would their culture have that much of an influence on them? If one didn't agree, wouldn't it make more sense for them to find a new culture for them to believe in? Okay, so Gandhi should have left India. Martin Luther King Jr. should have moved to somewhere in Africa. Frederick Douglass should have never fought against slavery. Dietrich Bonhoeffer should have never bothered to go back to Germany. He fought, well, he didn't fight, but he preached against the Nazis. He was a preacher who was killed in a concentration camp. Should have never resisted the Nazis. He should have either stayed in Germany and gone along with it, or he should have lived in some other country. He could have stayed in America. Or actually, I think he was in England when the Nazis took power, and a lot of friends in England said, "Don't go back, Dietrich. You don't like them. You shouldn't go back. You should stay here. You're gonna get killed if you go there." He went back because he felt like it was the right thing to do. We look at those people as heroes: Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Mahatma Gandhi, the Dietrich Bonhoeffers, others who resist what we consider evil. We consider them greater heroes when they resist their own culture. That's a lie if there are no objective ethics. That's just silliness and foolishness. We shouldn't make them heroes. We should say, look at that stupid Mahatma Gandhi. He was working for the British in South Africa. He had a pretty good life. He should have just stayed there and done that. Why did he go to India and wear Indian clothes and walk around barefoot to protest? That was a waste of his time. So you get my point. Right? This is, if we have moral heroes, then there must be morals. Because usually what we mean by a moral hero is someone who stands against evil, even if the rest of their culture says it's okay. So anybody who was German and resisted the Nazis in World War II, all we could say about them, if there's no objective ethics, is that they're stupid. And anybody who fights, who fought racism in the U.S. in the 50s and 60s, they were just stupid. If there are no such thing as objective ethics, that's all we can say. They were silly. They wasted their time. They should have just moved somewhere. Are we going to say that? If we believe, as I do, that Mahatma Gandhi was a hero, that Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a hero, that Martin Luther King Jr. was a hero because they resisted the evils in their culture, preached against them, worked against them. Even if we're going to say it's better to fight, to do peaceful resistance, that better means that it's good.